Set a spark to your integrated business and marketing strategies with America's top entrepreneurs and business leaders here at Integrate and Ignite with your host, Lori Jones.
Welcome to the Integrate and Ignite podcast. Mark Lake is Chief Technology Officer at Roccor, military commercial hardware supplier in the rapidly growing small satellite market. Not only does he oversee technology and advanced product development efforts, multi-organizational cooperative ventures, and strategic partnerships for technology capitalization, but Mark also works day-to-day on the marketing communications details. He guides the company's messaging and positioning at a very, very high level through his creative vision. Mark started his career with NASA, and we are so excited to have him on the show today. Welcome to I&I, Mark.
Thank you, Lori. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate your time.
We appreciate you so much. We've been working with Roccor for many moons now, no pun intended. And Mark has to be one of the most creative technology people I have ever met in my career. And today we're going to talk about some not only great news that we're going to share, but really some of the innovation that what seemingly is mostly external marketing, how it ultimately impacts internal communications, something that is so critical in today's landscape amid COVID. Before we get there, tell us more about Roccor.
Sure, thanks. So Roccor is coming up on its 10th birthday next year. Coincidentally, it'll be the 60th anniversary of Alan Shepard's first suborbital flight into space. And as a small high-growth startup company in the aerospace sector, we've gone through already a couple of phases from kind of pre-adolescence through adolescence and now young adulthood. And the vision of the company is really rooted in the transformation that's going on in the satellite industry right now. We are really disrupting the way that we're engineering and designing satellites, and we're shortening the cycles from first idea to launch. And it's forcing the supply chain within the satellite industry to change the way they do business. We can't take 5 to 10 years to engineer a satellite anymore. We need to do things in 1 to 2 to 3 years. So that's the essence of Roccor and why it is a high growth business and what we're trying to do with it. And then as far as tying it back to culture and really the marketing and the messaging side of it, in order to do that, it's all about the people. And we recognized that almost 10 years ago when Roccor was founded, that we wanted to attract the best of the best and retain them and get them really passionate about the company and also the opportunity that we're presenting in the market. And we think we've done a pretty good job of doing that. We've got now about 80 people, starting from 2 or 3 10 years ago to about 80 now, and a really great vibe around the office. People that are very, very invested in their personal career, very, very invested in the company, very, very invested in the mission that we're about, trying to do things quickly and creatively.
Well, and from those conversations that you had very early on in your garages to where you are today, building that culture and finding the right people and putting them into the right seats is absolutely key. And that does not happen without strong branding. That is where the external marketing really does help, that aspirational component of someone aspiring to come to work for Roccor at some point.
Absolutely. And I'll tip my hat to you and the Avocet team. And on conversations that we had going back about 2 or 3 years ago, at the time, Roccor was about a 25, 30 person company. We were starting to get a sense of who we were in the market space. And we did a wonderful brand building exercise at that time with your guidance. And what came out of that was a tagline for Roccor: delivering peace of mind. And sort of an unusual or unexpected, I guess I should say, tagline for a bunch of engineers who think about delivering hardware products. We don't deliver peace of mind, we deliver a hardware product. No, actually, we're delivering peace of mind. At the end of the day, our customers, if we're doing our job right with the products that we're delivering to them, our customers are happy with that outcome, and they're happy with the interactions that they have with us. Our brand of engineering is highly, highly interactive internally within the company, but also with our customers and the rest of our supply chain partners. So we reach across those contractual lines and engage in a lot of conversation flow. And so at the end of the day, with the help of your talented team, we were able to kind of reflect on that and then put out in front, this is who we are. We're trying to deliver peace of mind. Once we struck upon that as our brand, a lot of things flowed from that, including our efforts to recruit. It really became sort of the starting of conversations with young, talented engineers that want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And they wanted to see an altruistic core to the mission of the company. So that external facing message really has become a reflection of who we are internally, and it hugely helpful to our
Yeah,
efforts to attract Roccorians, as we've come to
yeah.
call ourselves.
And we love our Roccorians, there's no doubt about it. I think something that's very unique, however, and not easy for a lot of businesses to really infiltrate, is the internal respect that engineers in particular have for marketing. And that really is built from inside, from within. And they love the creativity. They understand that it may not be something that they do day to day, but they respect the effect that marketing has on top line revenue, or on, landing that next incredible contract, or really creating a culture that people flock to. And it's the internal communications that I think really differentiates Roccor from among the pack.
I hope to think that that's helpful to the mission of marketing. I know that what I've seen from my seat is engineers are an interesting kind of a psychology. I am an engineer, right? So I have to kind of take it on the chin a little bit. We're, by our training and our nature, we're trained to be really respectful of the laws of physics, and in that sense be very truthful with ourselves about what our work product is. And I think if within the technology sector, if there's a tendency by some organizations to not embrace marketing, it's out of maybe the fear that, well, marketing is going to bend and twist the reality of it, and I want to be really clean with the truth. And all we've done, I think, internally within Roccor, to make sure that the folks that are doing the hard work of engineering are also alongside the effort of marketing, is just make sure that we're not trying to market anything that's not truthful. And so if we can keep everyone feeling that we're speaking from a point of honesty, integrity, transparency, then everything else starts to flow from that. And what I found is that's actually the most powerful branding, marketing messaging you can convey anyway: truthfulness, honesty, especially in this time. We're experiencing what seems to be challenge in dealing with honesty and transparency. So our engineering staff, our production teams have been really happy to come along for the marketing ride, knowing that they're not going to be asked to say things dishonest or untruthful. And then also there's going to be cool swag. We're going to come up with some cool designs.
Which of course we're both wearing today. And you know where it did start, though. It starts with the leadership from the top, and understanding the mission, the vision, and the values of the business, and making sure that everything that you do, the transparency, the humbleness, the honesty, the trustworthiness, that sense of purpose, all relates back to that.
I hope so. It certainly, my time with this management team has been nothing short of joyful, and this is after a lot of decades in the industry. We all seem to be in lockstep. We all seem to kind of be able to finish each other's sentences, and it's all rooted in a common sense of what we're about, and then a desire to be open about that and transparent, and not to be at mixed purposes. So I think that has helped us. The fact that we kind of get along well with one another to create the vision that we can then convey with consistency and with unanimity within the company, and then through marketing externally to our stakeholders.
And that's exactly how you do deliver peace of mind. There's no doubt about it. So let's talk about the business today. And you are considered a fast growth business. There's no doubt about it. And although you're celebrating your 10-year anniversary, the growth in which you've achieved up to that point has been astronomical by today's standards, and something really, really to celebrate. how have you, so constant change, right? Whether it be the amount of space that you have, whether it be, oh, we're going to start marketing and pull the trigger on that, actually having business, biz development people instead of all the leaders of the business, the founders having to do everything. You can ultimately start to parse out the operational pieces of the business so that you can set people up into areas to, achieve that growth that you have. Let's talk about that ever-changing environment and the importance of internal communications during that.
Yeah, it's sort of it's the reason why people go into small startup businesses. I think, you like change. There's something in your soul that you just kind of like to mix it up a little bit. And it's not just change for the sake of change, but it's recognizing that a small high growth business just goes through these phases. That the best analogy I can use to relate it to other people who have never really been in a startup environment is it's very much like, parenting children. There's a different set of rules and expectations when the kids are 2, 3, 4 years old and you're just trying to get them to think about school than what you meet when the kids are in elementary school and now starting to develop a social swirl, and then eventually high school, and then moving beyond high school to adulthood. Startup companies the same way. In the early phases, there's a real closeness. You have to be looking at a short-term game of, let's get through this year and into next year, and let's see some growth. Let's see some affirmation that what we're doing is going to be right. And then as you get to kind of the middle age phase or the middle school phase of a startup company, there's now, I've got to bring business process in. I've got to grow. I've got to become more mature. I've got to be more proper business. Through all those phases, especially for folks that came on right at the beginning, they have to be brought through that process and recognizing that things are going to change. They're going to change because they have to change. At some point, we've got to bed down organizational structure so it's scalable beyond just 2, 3, 4, 10 people. You can get by with everyone wearing every hat for a while, but then it's important for people to find that right seat on the bus. And we've been able to grow the company. This last phase of growth, which brought us now to about 80 people, is where we really had to live through the organizational evolution. And we became AS9100 certified from a quality system and productivity perspective. We reorganized engineering and the operations side of the business. We kind of reestablished director 4 level of responsibility, and then brought people into those roles and then helped them grow into that set of responsibilities. And through it all, a lot of communication, a lot of carrying people through that evolution. And now we're at a point where the next hockey stick of growth for us that'll take us from 80 to 200-300 people, it's more of a linear process. We can just sort of add depth to the bench in all the different structural units because we've kind of gotten the organization in place. And hopefully we've done enough to empower our current organizational leaders to know how to organize and keep hiring, that they'll be able to do it with a little bit less hand holding from the top. We'll see.
Yeah.
But certainly the next doubling or so in size is going to be, for me, fun to see, because I'll have less hands on it and just more watching from the sidelines.
Yeah, it's so much fun. There's no doubt about it. And certainly we're amongst COVID right now, and you have pivoted left and right. We've pivoted from a marketing standpoint and internal comms standpoint externally. You've hired 30 new employees, team members during COVID, and some of them even moved here from out of state. So that to me says so much about the culture tenets, the ability to adapt to change, the ability to pivot very, very quickly and get things done is something that I think the organization should celebrate. If we talk about COVID just for a second here, you have a lot of hands-on engineers that are doing things, in labs each day with their hands, and they need to be able to interact with people. They need to be in their space. Talk to us about how you delivered the message with COVID and how you quickly adapted to that enormous amount of change that the organization went through.
Yeah, wow. I'd love to take credit for it. I had little to do with it. And I have the great fortune of having a CEO, Chris Pearson, and our Chief Operations Officer, Heather Kuhar. They really dove into that quickly, immediately, instantaneously. Back in March, when it was still very vague, what the policies and practices were going to be that were going to come down to us through local health departments, what the federal position was going to be. All we knew is that we had to keep a company operating. And to your point, an important part of that was that a certain amount of our work product is hands-on hardware in the lab facility. We had to treat our laboratory facility as got to keep it open. Essential that we keep it open, kind of like a restaurant. If you can't get the kitchen open, you can't serve food, you can't have a business. So we went about it from that perspective with the vision that we'll do everything that we learned to be possibly helpful to keeping the facility clean, safe, not a source of transmission, and working, right? Mm-hmm. And then we quickly, went through, okay, certain people are critical people in the sense that they have to do their job at the facility. So let's treat them with a separate set of kid gloves in terms of how do we look at their, health situation. And if something comes up, if they develop any kind of symptoms, how do we react to that? We started doing some cross training. Meanwhile, those who could work remotely, we very quickly went into a remote working environment. We adopted Microsoft Teams as the platform for interaction. Within a week, we had retrained everyone to kind of bring the conversations through the Teams platform. And honestly, within the first month of this, we had just settled into a new rhythm where really productivity hadn't dropped off. The physical plant was only hosting about a quarter to a third of our staff. And most of the work product that could be done remotely was being done remotely pretty seamlessly. And then we just settled into a rhythm as a management team of watching that and looking for when do we see things not working? And if so, let's address those issues. We have, over the course of the pandemic so far, had 2 situations where we had positive test cases within our 80 some staff and or immediate family. But luckily, in both situations, we were able to prevent any kind of an outbreak from occurring and prevent a facility shutdown. We've been aggressive with our facility cleanliness, with our social distancing, with our use of masks and everything. And it's served us quite well. And we've been able to basically keep the company up and running as it needs to run and growing, as you point out.
Yeah, and you've been doing a phenomenal job and maintaining. So I think one of the lines in the sand with COVID and internal comms right now is maintaining one-on-one relationships without a screen. So the executive team has done a beautiful job, with care packages, with weekly communication protocol where you're entertaining one another. You're always entertaining one another. It's an unbelievable culture, but truly just having a lot of fun and making sure that the relationships are as sticky as possible during a time period seemingly that could be very, very difficult to maintain that.
Yeah, I think there's been a hidden benefit to us, or blessing almost to us, the pandemic. We as a company are so much a social swirl. Even those of us who are introverted engineers really thrive on the swirl. And all of our projects are, team structured, where there's 4, 5, 6 people working collaboratively. And so that social swirl is so integral to how we do it. But what we've learned is you can still have that swirl, even in a remote environment, like what we're doing with this podcast right now. You can still get that connection. You can still get that communication. You can develop that sense of common purpose and kind of maintain that esprit de corps. And sometimes it's just the little gestures that keep that vibe going. Even though we can't be in the same room, can't give each other a high five or a hug or whatever, we can do it kind of in a virtual sense. So we've looked for every opportunity to do that and keep people feeling well connected. And I think overall, we've been able to do okay with it, as much as society at large has been able to do okay with this struggle.
I would totally agree. I think it's definitely been something that's been phenomenal. So, one of the other pivots, of course, is the way that we market externally. We have big trade shows each year that are very, very important from a biz development standpoint. And that all came crashing down for many, many brands out in the marketplace or the world today, us being one of those. And coming up with a campaign ultimately that would resonate with people at the buyer table, number one, but just the industry as a whole while we still deliver peace of mind, was something very critical for the organization. Share with our audience today how we ultimately came up with the positioning or the new marketing program for this year.
Yeah, well, this started back late of last year and early this year before COVID was really on anyone's radar screen substantially. And we were just taking it in as a company. Where were we now in our market position? How were things evolving? And not wanting to wander away from our tagline of delivering peace of mind, we wanted to take advantage of what we've been experiencing, which is a real significant swell of new business and a lot of attraction to our brand and to our company. And taking a step back and looking at where the industry is sort of fighting against itself, trying to not walk away from all the hard lessons learned over the last 50 to 60 years, but at the same time learn new lessons and figure out how to do things more quickly and agilely while still of a high quality that the industry is used to. And from that, again, Avocet came in to kind of hear where we were. We knew we needed to create some sort of a higher level brand message for the year and capitalize on this sudden upsurge we're getting in new business and try to capture it, wrap it into some kind of a messaging theme. And we had some great exercises back in the January timeframe where we kind of took it all in. You know, some of our engineers and program managers, business development people, your creative folks, we kind of went through this guided meditation almost about what does this all mean. And I remember there was a comment at one point talking about the older factions within the aerospace industry and how, in a sense, we're trying to teach them new tricks, kind of like you teach an old dog new tricks. And from that little message, all of a sudden spun it into old space new tricks. And that tagline immediately caught our attention from inside the machine. We're like, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. It's respectful that old space is not something we want to just get rid of. We have to respect that and honor that tradition. But at the same time, we've got to learn some new tricks. We've got to do things quicker. We can't just accept that we can't do it that way because we haven't been recently doing it. So with that new kind of spin of words, we started thinking about now, how do we take that visually out to the marketplace respectfully? And we came up with this great idea of using black and white imagery from the beginnings of the space program that everyone respects, but that balancing that with some colorful imagery of kind of new age imagery. And from a visual design standpoint, all of a sudden that started taking us in the direction of content and messaging content. And gosh, momentum was building. January, February, we were really getting excited. And all of a sudden, March,
in a very big way.
In a big way, everyone all of a sudden had to go into this weird alternate reality of COVID. And the biggest trade show that, one of the biggest trade shows that we go to every year, which was scheduled for, as I believe, late March, early April timeframe, that was kind of our aim point. We were going to have great booth. We were going to go out there with all kinds of cool swag. And you guys had been at the center of helping us design that visual content, that messaging content. We were really excited about going out into the into the physical space of a trade show with that message. And then all of a sudden the trade show shut down. And within a week, we had flip-flopped into a campaign towards a virtual trade show. That trade show just shut down, but there was another trade show that was on the calendar for about a month later that had already announced they were going to go virtual. And then with your guidance and help, we just flipped it to how do we do this virtually? And I got to say that now that we've done it, it was incredible. When we started thinking about how to do it, it was frightening.
Yeah, it was. It was for us too, by the way. And I think the key point is trade shows are sales arenas, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that we were concerned about the marketing. We knew that we collectively were going to build an audience, but what we were concerned about is how would the audience react in today's virtual environment. And I must say, we took a very, very unique approach to this from the standpoint of expert panels so that we could drive an audience versus just, meeting rooms where we chit chat. And one of the most important components of that was having the BD team at the table to become a part of the process so that they had ownership and their innovative thinking could really deliver panels and expertise that the audience would flock to, something that marketing doesn't always have the privilege of having the inside scoop on.
Yeah, and it when I think back on it and I reflect on how these panels came off, it exposes for me sort of a little bit of the psychology of what happens at a trade show. that you don't really think about, or I'd never really thought about before. Our business development people they're just very artful in a conversation, not just a dyadic conversation with one person, but in a room. They're really good at what they do when they come into a room where there's a conversation going around them, and they can come into that conversation, and with a little bit of nuance and art form, they can start to draw some attention to the brand, starts to draw some attention to what the company's trying to do. And it's very much reacting in the moment to that conversation that's happening. It's more like improvisational jazz
Mm.
when they really do it well. And it was hard for any of these business development folks to imagine how they were going to do that in this virtual environment when they're used to doing it in a jazz ensemble at a trade show. Give me a stage and I'll start to perform. But by encouraging us to host these panel sessions where we had 3 or 4 other people from experts from around the industry there, and then structuring it, kind of scripting it ahead, not hard scripting it, but arranging the conversation ahead of time so that it became sort of improvisational. And then our BD folks had the opportunity inevitably to come in with that voice of, hey, what are we doing in this area? And having the whole thing not be about product sales, but sort of thought leadership. What is the industry trying to do? It was fantastic. It was really sticky. The conversations were really sticky. People dialed in and stayed for the whole hour. I was amazed at the statistics that you showed us afterwards, the effectiveness, how we had captured people's attention and drew their mind to what we're doing in the middle of these kind of thought leader conversations. So
Yeah,
again,
it was a total blast, I have to say. And developing pre, during, and post campaigns are key. With an owned, earned, shared, and paid model, key. You can't just push out paid and expect it to work. We had the PR backing it up, the advertising, the thought leadership from pre-placed articles, and just the technology piece of it, which was a huge component. The landing pages, it was just a fully integrated approach that really played out very well. And not only did we get direct prospects and even clientele to the table, but we had 30% of the entire show hit our website, which was absolutely key to building brand awareness. That seemingly at a one-on-one trade show would not have been achieved.
well, yeah, and comparing it to the same trade show last year, because you guys did a great job of capturing data analytics from last year, which was an on-site, in-person trade show, but we had backed it up with a new web presence and delivered some, virtual content alongside of the physical, interactions at the trade show. I think in my recollection is we more than doubled our, sort of quote foot traffic compared to last year. And we had a similar kind of message that we conveyed this year, but we did it virtually. So in effect, I think we did a better job of getting foot traffic to the virtual booth this year than we did the real booth last year.
Right.
I want to make sure that we take the time to do this in the future when we go back to real face-to-face trade shows, that we don't get lazy. We learn from lessons that we did through the virtual campaign, and use that to really bolster our physical presence when we go back to the on-site presence.
It will be very interesting to see what components of virtual take hold as we move forward and ultimately move into one-on-one interaction again. And there are downfalls. That one-on-one interaction is totally different. It is not as personal, and we do strive to get back to that. But I believe there will still be pretty strong virtual components. So very, very exciting time period for the organization. Tons of pivots this year, all exciting as I look at them. And we've got a big announcement that has just been made in the marketplace. And in order for us to celebrate 10 years correctly, and in order for us to maintain this fast growth that we need to, ultimately, you as a leadership team had to consider how you were going to get there.
Yeah, this is the inevitability of any high growth startup company almost regardless of the business sector. You can only go so far with your bootstraps. Eventually, the company to succeed needs to attract the attention of outside investors. High growth companies are very capital intensive, especially in the high tech arena. Our facility, uh, the, uh, the payroll, until we get to a point as a company that we have a cash cow product, something that we're selling for profit margins of 300%, which is not likely to happen in the satellite arena. Just funding continued growth of the company becomes pretty challenging for a bootstrapped company, which is what we were, what we have been. So going back a year or two ago, the management team started anticipating that we would hit this point, not knowing precisely when it would become critical, but knowing that over these few years that we were hitting a point of size and growth speed, that outside investment money was going to be critical to continuing the growth. And this year, we're really pleased to have found a partnership with a stakeholder company and really outside investors under the brand of Redwire that looked at Roccor as it existed, where it was in its growth path, and said, you're the perfect company for our portfolio. And after many months of deep dive conversations that include, of course, peeling off all the layers of IRS auditing and everything that companies have to expose, the painful process of discovery. There's a lot of discovery there. At the center of it was a lot of conversation about culture and about how we do what we're doing, what are we doing with our brand, and where the Redwire brand wants to go. And what we found is just really a wonderful marriage of need and opportunity, two-way. And so, yeah, last week we were really proud and pleased to announce the marriage of sorts of Redwire to Roccor. We are now one of 4 companies within a portfolio under the Redwire umbrella. Redwire is itself funded by a private equity firm that is not new to aerospace, but kind of new to the satellite side of aerospace. The private equity fund that has stood up Redwire had more experience on the commercial aviation or the aviation side of aerospace, but wanting to get into the satellite side of aerospace because this is really where the high growth is happening in aerospace right now. So we're excited to have smart investors behind the scenes that know a lot about our industry and that are learning a lot quickly about this new side of the satellite side of the industry. We're really excited about the management team at Redwire and what they've done with the portfolio of companies that are all very complementary to Roccor. So that includes a company called Made in Space that's based in Jacksonville, Florida. It's got some really forward-leaning ideas about how to build large satellites in the future. A company called AdCol Space in the central, I guess, Boston area. AdCol's been around for about 40 years. They've become the industry standard for certain kinds of sun sensors for satellites that help satellites know where they are flying. They really are the global leader in that area. So to have that heritage behind us now is exciting. And then finally, Deep Space Systems down in Littleton, Colorado, not that far from us, just down the Front Range, a bit to the south. And they've done a lot of interesting work of recent in human space flight. That's not an area that Roccor has traditionally been in, but there's a nice kind of complementary blend of the 4 portfolio companies under the Redwire brand. And we're excited to be joining the team and looking forward to figuring out how these synergies are going to help our business continue to grow.
Well, I tell you, it is incredibly exciting. There's no doubt about it. And one thing that I thought was so unique regarding the approach that you took, with the acquisition was you're an ESOP model. And you were an employee-owned company, and transitioning, from employee-owned to, the heart of the employee is still there. The financial structure is just a little bit different, is very, very unique. And the way in which the leadership team took it upon themselves to include the team members along the way is something to be celebrated. You were very open and transparent about the process, but also Redwire looking at the brand and the strength for the ESOP model that had built the brand over time and how they were going to transition that equally was as important. Talk to us about the internal communications and some of the great moments that you had during that process.
Yeah, happy to. It's been it's complicated when you think about all the moving parts, but let me try to simplify it by talking about this. Employee ownership is still absolutely critical to the ethic at Roccor, to the essence of being a Roccorian. We pride ourselves, and I think this is true everyone within the company. You pride ourselves walking in the door thinking, hey, this is my company. And you really want that deeply rooted sense of pride and ownership to be there. It plays off in simple ways like not leaving your dirty dishes in the kitchen sink. Take pride in that. But most importantly, the way that our team works with one another when we're executing programs, it's so important that we have respect for one another and respect for the company and respect for the company goals, and we retain that and maintain that as we go forward. The ESOP model, when we were a company of 6, 8, 9 people that really didn't have any reputation to bank on, we used the ESOP as a way of attracting people from other larger companies and say, hey, come work with us, be part of this high growth moment, and you're going to own a piece of this thing. Wouldn't you like to do that? And that was really, really critical and important at the very early phases of growth. We also, because of that, we were attracting people who were pretty gutsy with their career, who were willing to take a risk on a small startup company, and justifiably so. They should have a piece of ownership of that company to take that risk. As we've grown to a company of 80, we found that personal financial risk to be part of the company is maybe less important or necessary for people. We don't necessarily need people to be taking a personal financial risk, but we do want them to have ownership. And so as we've made this transition, we've been able to do good things for those who have been here with us for 3, 4, 5 years. We've been able to liquidate their stock options, which means now they can take something and
They're
put it in
happy campers.
yeah, they can put something in their retirement account that
Yeah.
was just nothing but speculative paper up until now. Good for them. They've helped us through this journey now, and going forward from this point, and this is through a lot of partnership discussions with Redwire. We've been able to find and put spotlight on aspects of our benefits plan that are still employee ownership rooted. Things like our profit share program has not gone away. It's going to be deepened and strengthened through this. So if we as a company are able to be profitable, the employees or the employee owners should continue to be profitable as well. They should enjoy some portion of that profit. And so it's keeping that incentive, financial incentive there that's part of ownership. It's also hopefully keeping that sense of shared pride that's an important part of ownership there going forward. And
and I think one of the unique elements and one of the reasons why this has transitioned so beautifully is the culture tenets that you had established, the transparency, the trust from day one, that upon every new hire was really ingrained, but then walking the walk and talking the talk as well, but truly ownership thinking. So that mentality that everyone can think on their own. We've got this goal out here, but what is the best way to get there? And allowing people to think, I think, is absolutely key to a successful transition like this.
Yeah, it has been, and I think give us another few months and we'll see how it feels a few months down the road. But even now, just on the first week after the ownership transition, I feel really good about the vibe around the office. People are switched on. They see it as a net positive for them as an individual, which they should, but also as a net positive for the organization. They understand the stability that's going to come from having deep pocketed investors behind us, the stability that's going to come from being part of a larger portfolio of companies that now can cover a wider waterfront, within our market. It's just a net positive all the way around. I think people are feeling that kind of vibe right now. So
there's no doubt about it. What advice do you have for our listeners today on how they can transition to a fast growth company from maybe where they are today, making sure that the internal communications are set in stone in order for them to leapfrog competition?
I guess the only advice I can give is really the advice that I was taught as a kid growing up in the Midwest. Honesty is the best policy, because if you overthink it, the methods, the motives too much, and you start confusing your own mind with things that you don't really feel comfortable sharing with everyone around the table, then boy, you're going to create difficulty for the company. What we've done as a management team throughout this entire journey of growth of the company to this point, and we'll continue to be committed to this going forward, is the growth is the goal has always been growth. There's, the company's going to get bigger because we want it to get bigger. At the end of the day, it is about making money. We want the company to become very profitable for anyone who's a stakeholder. We're true to that vision, and we're trying to, whenever we make a decision, including the decision to sell the company to a larger entity, we have to be really honest about why that's a good thing for the company and why we think it's a good thing for individuals. As long as we can be rooted in that commitment to honesty and transparency, everything else seems to have a way of working itself out. I mean, good, hardworking, honest people like transparent environments where they can be set up for personal success, and that personal success, doesn't come at the cost of the company itself. I think most people are seeking that out in the high-tech sector.
Yeah.
So my only advice is just be true, be real.
Well, and that integrity will definitely, move the company even faster than where you sat at the beginning of 2020. Mark Lake, your insight is always so incredible. The wisdom that you share, and truly the culture tenets that has allowed you ultimately to build this very, very strong foundation of Roccorians and make these huge pivots throughout 2020 is something that I think people will be writing and talking about for quite a long time. Thank you so much for your appearance on the Integrate and Ignite podcast.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you and your firm for doing all you've done to get Roccor where it is right now. It's been fantastic. I couldn't imagine a better relationship with a communications firm that we've had with you and with the Epicet team. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
This episode is complete, but the inspiration has just begun. Head over to avocetcommunications.com for show notes and more aha moments. Tune in regularly to ignite your integrated business and marketing strategies with Lori Jones and the Integrate and Ignite podcast.